Good evening. So, woohoo! I've been advised just before I got up on stage to talk slowly and clearly so you can understand my accent. In case you're in any doubt, this is actually what true English sounds like, okay? So I hope that's slow and clear enough for you all. It doesn't matter how many times I come to your country, I always feel like the only hobbit at a Lord of the Rings convention. So, I'm the same size in real life, so. Let me start. I have 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you a story this evening. Let me tell you a story about a pastor called John who lives in a small town in Scotland. You've never heard of him, and you've never heard of his community. You see, where John lives, unemployment is high, drug abuse is off the charts, and life is hard and short. John was saved 10 years ago or so on a holiday abroad, and when he returned home, he discovered that there was no gospel church, no evangelical church in his community. And so he struggled to grow in the faith. Not long after him, his wife and his children were saved, and also a couple of his friends and some of his neighbors. And so with no other option, they started meeting every Sunday in his house. He had no theological training. He hadn't even finished high school. But John did the best he could with the tools that he had. Now, soon they outgrew the house, and so they rented a little hall in the middle of their neighborhood. Times were hard, money was scarce, people would profess faith in Christ, and then a few short months later they would fall away. They'd go back to the drink, back to the drugs, enticed away by a member of the opposite sex. And sometimes John's group would swell. They'd have 30 people meeting. And sometimes it would sink back down to just him and his wife and his children. And John was often lonely, and he didn't really know how to handle some of the difficult pastoral situations that came his way. He tried to get support and counsel, but it was difficult to come by. Pastors in nearby towns were suspicious of him, especially because he lacked theological training, and so they kept him at arm's length. I mean, he spoke in a few churches in other cities about his need for financial help, for personal mentoring, for mature Christians to move into his community and to help him grow this church. People listened politely, even sympathetically to him. Some of them even gave him money now and then. But a tired, run-down man with a young family, half a dozen semi-literate converts, no musicians, meeting in a drafty old hall was enough to put them off. So the months and the years rolled by, and John was slogging his heart out for Jesus, giving it his all, trying to reach his community, his town, for the Lord. And then one day, out of the blue, John hears that a large church in the next city is thinking of planning a church in his town. And John's elated. And so he rings the pastor and he asks him, "Is this true?" "Yes," the pastor says. "We feel a burden for your town." "Me too," said John excitedly. "I've been working at this for 10 years on my own. Would you be interested in partnering with us?" Then comes the awkward silence. "Well, we've got other plans. We want to plant a church in the city center next to the university campus. We've got a team ready to go with a young pastor. We want this plant to become a pioneering center for ministry movements across the city. Maybe, John, maybe we could get together and do something later." And John hung up, devastated. He'd heard it all before. He spent the rest of the day in deep depression. He was glad that a gospel witness was coming to town, but it wouldn't be coming anywhere near his community. That much was certain. But what more could he do? He couldn't compete with this new church plant and their huge budget. He couldn't compete with their massive online presence. I mean, John didn't even have a website. He struggled to get enough money to pay for his children's clothing, never mind build an online presence. He didn't attract young people because he didn't have any young people. They struggled in their church to pay the electricity bill every month, never mind finance an internship program. So John felt defeated. He felt dejected. He felt ignored. He felt angry. No one was coming to help him. His little church wasn't growing. Maybe, he wondered, maybe I should just pack it all in and go and do something else. Now, my name is Mez McConnell. I'm the director of 20 Schemes, which is a church planting ministry working in some of Scotland's toughest communities. I have been in pastoral and church planting ministry for almost 20 years, both in Europe and in South America. And I can tell you that John's experience is the experience of literally hundreds, thousands of pastors, church planters, and revitalizers, not only in my country, but in poor communities around the globe. Earlier this year, Acts 29 launched our Church in Hard Places initiative in an effort to support, resource, and train men like John who work in some of the hardest places in the world with little money, no theological support, and a complete lack of training. The poorest pastors in the poorest communities around the world are trapped. And they're trapped because they just cannot compete with the multi-billion-dollar mercy ministry industry that has grown up around their communities. They're fed up of going cap in hand to churches, looking for support, looking for prayer, and looking for people who will come into their communities and help the ministry. Instead, many of them are treated like glorified travel agents for rich Western Christians looking for a cross-cultural experience. And so many pastors like John, they are so desperate to attract support that they put on poverty safaris so that rich outsiders can wander around their communities, take selfies, update their profiles on Snapchat and WhatsApp. And they wince as they realize that churches will drop $20,000 on a missions trip for their young people and then prevaricate over supporting them for a few $100s a month. How do we know how you'll spend the money, they ask? How do we know you won't waste our few $100s a month, they ask, as they take their young people for a day out to the local tourist markets so they can have some downtime on their week-long mission trip. The system used to recruit missionaries and young people like you is broken. There is a fault in the matrix. Just aged myself there. But there's a fault in the matrix, and nobody seems keen to fix it. Because after all, many of you are realizing your dreams by traveling overseas and giving the appearance of helping the poor. And the evangelical Christian community in the West buries its head in the sand despite the damage that badly thought out mission trips do to pastors like John and their communities around the world. Let's not think too deeply about the fact that the Western evangelical money machine basically runs the most sophisticated and expensive 4D real-life experience babysitting service in the world, and then tries to pass it off as legitimate mission and poverty alleviation. Agencies will spend millions literally, on flash and emotive videos and online blah blah, in an effort to persuade you to give your lives to the cause of world mission. I know, 20 schemes, we are desperate for gospel workers. We are desperate for men and women to come to Scotland and share the good news of Jesus with people who are perishing. Desperate. I could quote you stats, all the stats you need. I could put up the PowerPoint on the screen for you. I could show you a video of lives being transformed by the gospel in Scotland among our poorest people. I could encourage you to come and join us on our exciting vision, but I'm tired of that approach. And you know what? I think most of you are tired of that approach too. We're just saturated. They gave me 15 minutes today to inspire you and to provoke you. And do you know what? I'm immensely grateful for that. They gave me the time to inspire you and provoke you into giving your lives for something more, something greater. But most of you are probably desperate to get to the exit so you can be first at the bookshop or get the freebies that are on offer. So here's my challenge to you, and it's simply this. Forget the selfies with David Platt and getting Kevin DeYoung to sign, your first edition copy of A Hole in Our Holiness. Woohoo! Forget the idea, spoon-fed to you since birth, that you are the future of the church in the USA and around the globe. You're not. Jesus is. And this is not a call to mission. Don't hear this wrong. This is a call to mission. This is a call to the right kind of mission. Okay? I can see Matt Schmucker sweating down the front. The best thing you can do for the kingdom of God this year, go home from this conference, go back to your local church, and knuckle down. Come into membership. Stop messing around. Stop dating other churches and hopping around from place to place. Go home, ask your pastor and your elders how you can better serve them and your local church. And go out and find out who are the Johns in your cities. Usually they'll be downtown somewhere, struggling away, invisible among all the bells and whistles of modern evangelicalism. And why don't you find those guys, and why don't you go, wherever they are in the world, why don't you spend your year out there? Why don't you spend your holiday time there? Go and do a free internship there. Go and serve guys like John in anonymity. Turn your iPhone off. Don't tweet about it. Keep it off Instagram. Millions of people around the world, 80% of the globe, live on less than $2 a month. Millions of people around the world are slipping into hell this year. There's only one gospel. Jesus Christ, the sinless one, came to earth to live a perfect life and die a humiliating death on the cross so that sinners like us could live in eternal glory with our Heavenly Father. And on the third day, he rose again, and he now sits at the right hand of the Father. And he's coming one day to collect his people up into his loving arms. And you know what? Jesus isn't looking for another David Platt. He's got quite a good one right now. He's not looking for another John Piper or another Kevin DeYoung. Jesus is looking for 1,000,000 Johns, ready to go anywhere and serve him faithfully. You see, the true heroes of the faith are not appearing on this stage at CrossCon this year. The true heroes of the faith are soldiering on in the trenches as we meet in difficult, heart-wrenching conditions, unseen by the world, but seen by God. Silently working, doing real mission among the poor. And they understand that it is the local church that will show off the manifold wisdom of God to the watching world and the spiritual realms. And they know that even if their churches are small, even if they don't sing very well, even if they struggle to keep their heads above water, even if they don't have great websites, even if they've not got an amazing online presence, they know that what they do for Jesus Christ and his glory matters. They matter. The Church of Jesus matters. And the sooner we realize that true biblical mission is a slow, monotonous grind, more than an adventure holiday, the better. Spending our lives in small, poor churches with unsophisticated but faithful preaching with a tone-deaf guitarist may not get you many likes on your Instagram account, may not look as good as handing out lollipops to cute, half-starved African children. But it's important all the same. So if you can't find a John in the poorer parts of your city or this country or overseas, then go and be a John. Go and sell all you have. Spend your life for Jesus. Because one day it'll all be over. The final curtain will come down. And we'll be asked one simple question. What have you done with the gospel treasure that I entrusted to you? God help us. Amen.